everyone. Welcome to Automation Caffeine, your dose of invigorating business automation tips packed as fun anecdotes and weird questions. We have a different guest every episode from various industries, countries, and backgrounds for a 20-minute online chat over coffee. My name's Jesse, co-founder of Trigger, serial entrepreneur, and above all, I'm a coffee snob. And today I'm joined by Sahil Khosla. Hi, Sahil.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to it for a while now, so it's really cool.
Yeah, likewise.
But before we really get started for our live audience, if you have any questions to Sahil, please add them in the comments. We'll pick them up at the end of the show during our live Q&A. So feel free to ask stuff. So let's get to it. Sahil, as you know, in 3 words, who are you?
Well, I would say I'd go with teacher, problem solver, and a multipotentialite.
Okay, multipotentialite. Tell me more.
Yeah, so basically, multipotentialite is a term that I came across a few years ago on a TED Talk. Actually, in this talk, someone explained the concept of a multipotentialite, and she highlighted all the different problems that these people face. And as she was describing these problems, I was like, that's me. That's like that answers a lot of questions about my entire life. Why I can't stick to one project, why I have to try different things, and so on and so forth. And that kind of gave me sort of like a sense of identity, almost that okay, I can align with this, and that allowed me to actually embrace it and go out and try different things versus trying to fit myself into a bucket, a predefined sort of path that people have carved for you already. So that's a multipotentialite, and that's me.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like it's sort of like the good side of ADHD. It's like I'm not ADHD, but I do a lot of things.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Cool. So rumor has it that that in the early 2010s or something around that time, when I was still playing Snake on my phone, that was the type of phone that I had.
So did I.
Already automated stuff like your front door in a way that allowed you to change the ringing mode as you came home. What was that about?
Well, yeah, I'll answer that one. Then I'll also take you even further back in the 90s. So that one
Wow.
was when the Android phones first came around. I had this app called Tasker. So this was like in today's version, like an iOS shortcuts app. So these are all these little automations you could do on your phone. And one of the options there was like you can use an NFC chip as a trigger. And I was really curious. I was just intrigued, like, okay, whoa, what's this? So I ordered these NFC chips off of Amazon. Actually, happen to have some here. So then I put this one at my front door. I put one at my office desk. And as I would like leave the house, I would tap it so that it would turn on the ringing mode on my phone. And as I entered back in, I would tap it again. So it like turns off the ringing mode because I'm back in home now. So that was one of the automations I built using that app and like a hard piece of little hardware NFC chip. And the one in the 90s was as a kid, like in middle school, as part of my curriculum, I was in the electronics lab in the school. And the teacher introduced us to something called an LDR. It's a light dependent resistor. So basically it changes, its resistance based on the amount of light available. So I put the 2 and 2 together and I built this little alarm that would go off when it's exposed to light. So I put that in my backpack because we had a problem in our school that in those days, like people eating each other's lunches as friends, as a fun. So I put this alarm. If anyone tries to open my backpack, this alarm would go off. So that was the other piece of hardware automation I did back in the day.
Cool. No free lunch for you, buddy.
Exactly. Gotcha.
I also heard that you found a way to pay with Visa at Costco, even though they don't accept Visa cards.
That's right, I did. Actually, yeah, it's a mini hack, almost like a workaround. So I learned that on their app or on their website, you can order. So obviously in the store you can't pay with a Visa, you have to pay with a MasterCard. But on the website, they do allow you to shop with Visa. I was like, that's interesting. And one of the things that they advertise a lot is buying Costco cash cards or like a gift card. So I'm like, okay, so maybe I can buy these gift cards using my Visa credit cards, and then shop at the store using those gift cards. So that works out perfectly. But there's a problem that my wife and I both go to Costco to shop, and we sometimes go at a different time. So we had all this hassle of all of a sudden of handling these gift cards and not remembering which one has how much balance, and so on and so forth. So I was getting these texts from my wife that, hey, can you send me a screenshot of that gift card? I did a couple of times, and I was like, okay, this has to be automated. so, so of
Of
course,
course.
I built an app. I use, I use Make, I use Airtable. I reverse engineered their website. They don't even have an API. So I just basically reverse engineered the website to figure out how to get the balance using the gift card number. So now everything's nicely stored in Airtable, and I have a Glide app going, which we have installed on our phones. So when we're at the store, we just open the app and get the card with the balance and pay for it.
That is so creative. I really like that. That you sort of hack the systems. Like, oh, you don't accept Visa? I'll show you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, yeah, true. And I mean, it's nice because yeah, here and we also have like the credit cards. You have this type, and you want to have your points on that one, but you can't pay with it everywhere. It's a whole hassle, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't want to deal with multiple cards, let alone the gift cards. So now it's all nice and concise.
Cool. So like what really strikes me is you're really creative with these solutions. Like you really find interesting solutions. How can people that might sort of be like, hey, how can I do this? How would you suggest they be sort of as creative as you? How can they learn how to be that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely, some of it comes from practice, right? Like you just take on challenging problems because the approach I've always taken at work is even like as a full time employee. If you take on the tickets that you know already how to do, then you're kind of just not learning anything new. But if you take on the tickets that actually seem a little bit harder or challenging, although they might take you a little bit longer, but then you also end up learning more, right? So that's one approach. The other approach is like just exposing yourself to different options, right? Like I do that all the time. I expose myself to different tools just so I have all these things in my tool belt. And then when the right time comes, all of a sudden this thing goes in my brain that, oh, there's a tool for that. Maybe we can try that. So just building this little like knowledge base, little, set of tools that you are familiar with. You don't have to learn them in detail, but just being familiar. And then, when you have a problem you come across, you try to solve it. If you can't solve it, just step away. The idea comes to you, and
Yeah.
the dots connect.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, that's it. That's really good advice, I guess, to sort of really try out different tools. And obviously, you've been tinkering for a long time, and you seem to me, like I said, I was still playing Snake while you were solving these things. But you're sort of ahead of the curve. And if you would start out today, as we discussed, what would you start out with? Like, what would be a good starting point for people to learn?
Yeah. So if you talk about people who don't have a background in tech or say software development and they want to get into this field of like automation or maybe like no code software development, I always recommend like starting small, right? Because no code is a bit of a misnomer as well. And then people also make it sound like that, okay, it's too easy, like anyone can do it. And yes, anyone can do it, but you still have to have like a learning path, and you have to like
Yeah.
start from some point to build your base. And because I've seen so many examples of people jumping directly to like a no-code tool like Bubble, and then they get all overwhelmed. They have never developed an application before, and even if it's no code, it doesn't mean no programming, no logic. You still have to understand those things. So starting small, like as simple as maybe like pick up a tool like Airtable and then just like try to build a directory, or maybe even pick up Notion, right? Like I just released a course on Notion actually yesterday, but basically in that I show how you can build tools within Notion. So that what that gives you is the ability to think about how development goes, how you like work as a developer, how you kind of take the requirement and convert it into a solution and go this whole life cycle. So start small, build your way up, and sort of familiarize yourself, and then you can pick a path. Like you want to go the development path, the automation path, the web development path. So you can do it all, right? So that's my advice.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. I get that. That I also think that today there's a lot more tools, and specifically, there's also a lot more teaching material available. I would say for these things. So it is relatively easy to get started. I would say, and the Notion courses and National Notion is a really cool tool indeed to use and to get familiar with some of the options of automation
Yeah.
that I've seen. Yeah. What is your favorite one right now?
As far as the tools are concerned,
Yeah.
so I'm using Make heavily.
Yeah.
I love that tool. And that would be my top. And then the second one would be Airtable right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be a good place for people to get started, right? If they want to do something, like these tools are fairly accessible. They all
Absolutely
offer free
free options.
versions.
Hmm.
Yeah, cool. So at Automation Caffeine, as you know, we really like our business automation. We've been talking a little bit more about personal automation so far, but we actually love it so much that we've obviously built our own AI. Right? It's so 2023 not to have our own AI helping us. So we feed the AI the profile of our guest, and we ask it to find the ultimate question to ask.
All right.
So this time we have it, and again, here we go. Our AI-generated ultimate question to Sahil Khosla, the founder of NoCode University, creative mastermind, and automation expert avant la lettre. Here we go. What do you prefer? A hockey games where players are robots, perfected in their game, but they occasionally get stuck in Zamboni mode. Or B, a self-driving car that can handle all the snowy roads with ease, but it insists taking a detour through every single Tim Hortons drive-through.
That's a good one. Great question. Good job, AI, whoever built that one. Let's see. I'll go with B. I love my coffee, and if my car is being driven for me, I can enjoy, I can enjoy the landscape, and also at the along the way get some caffeine. I'll be heavily caffeinated, but that's okay. I'll have the energy to go outdoors.
Yeah, you'll definitely stay awake for that drive.
Oh, yeah, for sure. In case the AI messes up.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I mean, if it drives perfectly, right? We've
Yeah.
been promised that only since 2018 or something by Tesla, so it's
Yeah.
just around the corner, I guess.
Around the corner.
Yeah, and maybe that's indeed maybe that's the ultimate automation caffeine, right? Where your car just drives you to the next coffee place
And
to
keeps you
stop.
caffeinated.
So your resume always also says that I looked this up, that you started as a software engineer, and if I'm correct, you worked at Expedia
Mhm.
before. What made you change course and start what you do now, the NoCode University?
Yeah, I've taken I've pivoted several times. I actually started out in electrical engineering, keeping my passion from the electronics world alive. But then, like midway through university, I realized that this is not for me, and I decided to switch up. But at that point, it was too late, so I had to like go on to get a master's, all that stuff. But anyway, I did graduate with a computer engineering background, and then I worked in the industry for about 10 years. I worked at Deloitte, I worked at Expedia, I worked at several other startups here, a couple other startups here in Toronto as well. So it kind of went back to that whole multi-potentiality thing, right? As a software engineer, pretty much like you come in, you pick up tickets, you write code, and you're like building these solutions. But in big companies, your role is sort of restricted in the sense that you're working on a very small piece of a very big system, and you
Yeah.
don't get to be as creative as you want to, or at least as I want to be, and you don't get to try different things. So that felt a little restrictive to me, and also at the same time. After doing it for so many years, I could see like the path ahead, and it didn't feel exciting anymore. So I thought like I have to take on a different challenge and try to do something, and then kind of really embrace my multi-potentiality. And because I knew building a business would mean not just being technical, but everything else that comes with it. So that kind of all of a sudden, as soon as I quit my job and started building my own business, opened up all of my senses, and it kind of felt like this thrill and this rush in the body that, okay, I get to do all of these things that I ever wanted to try. So that was one of the reasons. And then I love to teach, so I thought, why not like start there and try to build something around that, where I can use my passion for teaching as well as kind of help others out.
Okay, and sort of if you, because it sounds like a huge leap to me, like leaving a job, which I mean, software engineer, you're probably pretty well off there. then taking a leap like that, yeah, that's quite interesting. What did you get started with like then? Like, what was the first thing that you sort of saw for NoCode University as you got started? Because I mean, you have to start somewhere, right? You had nothing at the start, I guess.
Yeah, I actually didn't land on the idea for a while.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, like as I mentioned, like I started playing around with these tools for a while before I quit my job, and then I found this whole like industry that I wasn't familiar with, the whole no code low code industry, both for automation and development. Like as a software engineer, who has a full time job, you write your code, you kind of don't even pay attention to some of these things because you're in your bubble. So it took me a while to realize that okay, there's more. There are so many things that I haven't explored, and once I started exploring, I realized okay, there's something here, and at least worth my time or at least worth a try. So yeah, first thing I guess what was to figure out okay, what does it even look like? Where do I focus? And I mean, solving some of these problems till date. So it takes a while to really figure out okay, what's the idea, where should you be focusing, and as a new business person, as a new like a solopreneur, I was totally lost, and it was really challenging at first, but that was exactly the point, like to have that challenge and then have that problem to solve. But yeah, that's how I got started.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting to hear. I've heard it from many people, but I find it very cool that you sort of said like, hey, look, I'm just gonna stop, and the thing that I want to do will come to me, instead of going like, oh, I'll do it sort of on the side first. Like that's how Zapier I think got started. It's like they,
Mhm.
they they sort of built it on the side, and then slowly it became bigger, and obviously now it's very very successful. But it was a side thing, and you were like, nope, I need to change course, and I'm just going to jump off the ship, and we'll see.
Yeah, because I knew like I knew based on my lifestyle, I don't have the time to do anything on the side with a full time job,
Yeah,
and given that, I was like, I will probably never have time to do things on the side. So does that mean that I'm never going to try this? So then the answer was, of course not. I don't want to regret not trying. So the only option was to jump and kind of then figure it all out, kind of build the plane as you fly it.
yeah,
So yeah, so I that was a conscious decision. Obviously, it was a calculated decision. I looked at all my finances, everything, and then realized, okay, it's now or never. I have the energy, the motivation, the drive to do it. Just go for it. So yeah, I know it's a bit of a leap. I don't recommend it to everyone. It's
that
not
is very
easy.
sound advice.
Yes, yes, for sure. Bit of a risky move, but you have to take your chances.
Yeah, yeah, true. I also heard that you've been working with like obviously those tools that we now discussed, but also that you've worked with back in the day, and I remember these tools, Dreamweaver
Hmm.
and the worst of the worst front page back in
Hmm.
the day, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Horrible, horrible things.
yeah. I even worked with the thing called GeoCities, if someone remembers.
Oh, GeoCities. Oh, that is taking me back. Yeah,
Probably the first no-code tool I ever used.
yeah, yeah. There's so many of those tools who sort of started off, and we no code was not obviously not a thing yet, but
Yeah.
they tried to automate things, right? Like
Mhm.
Dreamweaver for sort of animations and everything, and also front page for building HTML. But what would you say is sort of the biggest improvement between those tools that you had back then and the ones that you have today? Because there's obviously, I mean, yeah, it's been around for a while, people would say, but yeah, there must be a change in now suddenly everyone's using these things. So they must be
Yeah.
better, right?
Yeah. I would say the biggest change is that those tools back in the day were probably aimed at developers. They were not very welcoming. Like they were like clunky and like so much going on and pretty overwhelming at first. So now definitely the focus of the new no-code tools is to kind of build it in a way so that it's more user friendly, more
Mhm.
intuitive, easier to get started, easier to see the result of what you're building. And then also, obviously, because everything's in the cloud, it's like one click deploy, right? Like even with like Dreamweaver, even if you built it, you still have to like download it, package it, get the server, get the domain, like upload everything. It's like so many things that as a non-developer you might not want to do. So with these tools, with the new tools, it's really simple. Like one click deploys, you get your domain, you're online within seconds. So yeah, I would say like the user friendliness for sure, and then building them. The new tools are built in a way that they're inviting for even people with a non-technical background. I'd say those two things.
Yeah, so sort of the completeness of the tool, right? It sounds like,
Yeah, like they're basically now one-stop shops, right? You
yeah.
get to do everything within the tool, and obviously you have to pick the right one, and you might have to play around with a few. But once you land on the right one, then you can pretty much go from idea to launch within that tool.
Yeah. Would you also say that, like, from my experience, back in the day, integration was super hard. I
Mhm.
remember being taught, because I'm also a software engineer by education, so we got taught like remote procedure calls and other stuff that you go like, oh my god, is it this hard to just connect two systems to each other? And nowadays it looks like everything has a web API.
Mhm.
That probably also sort of allows for further integration. And
100%.
yeah. Uh, what are sort of the things on that front that you see sort of now that you would use most? Like obviously Make and everything, but do you also do like custom integration with custom APIs? How's that? How do those
Yeah.
relate?
Yeah, well, okay, so that's a good point. So Make is okay. Make and Zapier are fine. Like other tools are fine too, but they're not going to cut it if the tool that you're trying to integrate with doesn't have an API, right? So I am actually working with someone right now who is using a tool for a while, and they don't want to move away from that, and it doesn't have an API. So no matter which automation tool you bring to the table, no API, no automation, right? So we have to do a bunch of different hacks, like using email notification and then parsing the email and then
Oh
kind of
yeah.
working off of that. So it's not fun. So definitely APIs are a must, right? Otherwise, you're not connected. You can't automate, and that's why, like, I shared that story from Jeff Bezos from all the way back from 2005, where
Yeah.
he pretty much demanded that every team has an API, otherwise they will be fired. And I think that was a great move because that's what led to AWS. That's what led to the company Amazon as a whole. So now the first thing when I pick my tools is to make sure that they're supported by the automation tools or at least have an API, because without that, it's a
Yeah.
no go.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that's also a good tip for people that are wanting to sort of get into this, and also for your business. I would say that having a tool indeed is very helpful as long as it has an API. So it sort of sets you up right for future improvements and expansions and
Mhm.
integrating it. Yeah, yeah, that.
Yeah, you can't operate in
Yeah.
isolation.
No, exactly. So even if you don't have it sort of clear yet, it would be a good move to already look at like what does it integrate with, and not necessarily knowing yet what you're going to use, but at least sort of, yeah, knowing what you can do.
Exactly, the capabilities.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, that makes sense. So all of those tools that you mentioned, right? It seems like you're always catching on pretty early. And well, last year we couldn't really get around AI. Obviously, it hit you in the face if you wanted it or not. But do you have any like creative tips for people to use AI in their automation projects? Maybe.
AI and automation projects. Yeah, well, the first one is going to sound obvious, right? Gen AI or generative AI. So anytime you're doing any kind of like creation, right? Whether it's like the biggest one I'm seeing right now is either creating content, which I personally don't like, or the bigger one that I like is repurposing. So, like, for example, we are building an automation right now to convert my YouTube videos into an SEO optimized blog post so that it can be shared as a video as well as text, right? So this one, I think everyone at this point understands that you can create text or convert text from one form to the other. But the sort of like behind the scenes, for especially for automation developers or automation folks who don't have a background in coding and maybe are not from a technical background, there's always this last like 20% problem, last 10% problem where you've gotten all the way, most of the things are working, but then you hit this point where, okay, this can only be done with code, or it can be done with a really complicated formula within Airtable or Smart Suite or something like that, or even within Notion. And then if you are not familiar, if you have not written code before, simple formulas, yeah, you can get by. complicated formulas sometimes become challenging for some people, or especially in cases where you are, say, working with an Airtable and you have to write a script, which it requires JavaScript. And again, if you've not written that before, you don't know how to code, then leverage AI. But you still have to be really good with describing the problem. What's the
Yeah.
context? What is the data looking like? And what's the output that you want? If you can describe that really well, and you know in your head how it would be done, and you can describe it to AI, then you get the code, and then you can sort of fill that last 10% gap. So that would be the other thing for like the automation folks to leverage AI behind the
Oh,
scenes.
that's a really smart way to use it. I've not done that myself yet, to sort of use it to write the little bits of code that you can then use in the integration platforms or the other things. And you mentioned that you still have to prompt really well, right? Because
Mhm.
that's always a challenge. Do you see that getting better over time? Sort of the understanding, let's say, quote unquote, understanding of the AI of what you mean.
So the AI systems understanding what we mean, or us getting
Yeah.
better at prompting?
Well, I prefer the AI getting better at understanding
Exactly.
me.
Yeah. So no, I think they will. Like, I mean, it's already pretty cool. Like, I actually don't spend a lot of time writing my prompts. I use it like chat.
Yeah.
Like, and I just give additional context based on their response. Just like I'm talking to a person, that if the answer doesn't make sense, I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. So you can either spend a lot of time crafting this giant perfect prompt to get the perfect solution in one go, or you can use it as chat, which I personally prefer. And that would be defeating the purpose if I have to learn how to prompt, to be honest.
I
That's another
fully
coding
agree.
language. Yeah,
I fully agree.
I would rather just talk to it like I talk to a regular person, and then have a conversation and get my answer. So yes, I do hope and assume that AI will get better at understanding what we are trying to do.
Yeah, I guess you can also like feed it back like the errors
Of
or
course.
problems that you get, and then say like, look, I get this error, so solve it for me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's already pretty good.
Yeah, cool. That's a really cool tip. I'm gonna try that soon, to be
Nice.
honest, because I haven't done it myself yet. Um, every episode, we ask our guest to ask a question to the next guest, as you know. And our previous guest was Gareth, who you know, Gareth Pronovost.
Mhm.
He had the following chain question for you.
All right, let's see.
All right, coming at you, Sahil. How do you imagine the no-code industry consolidating in the future, especially around the small, medium business and enterprise sectors of the market?
All right, great question. Thanks, Gareth, for that. So I would say in terms of consolidation in this no-code, low-code sector, a couple of things come to mind. First one would be, I think we might see some kind of like a M&A, like some kind of merger between either like a big player acquiring like a small player, or a couple of small players kind of joining forces to go after a big player.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of tools where I see overlaps in their use cases and how they look and feel, and how they even like work, what kind of systems they work with, which could be a potential like option, especially if they're early in their journey and don't have a huge customer base to merge. So that would be like the one thing we can expect to see in 2024. The other one I would say is consolidation in terms of capabilities, and we are already seeing that with tools like Zapier. We're seeing that in it. So Zapier was an automation tool, but now it's also doing interfaces. Airtable was just a database tool, but also added interfaces, and the automation keeps getting better. So I do see. I think what's going to happen is that currently people were using different tools and connecting them together. Maybe all of these tools will add so much capability that you might be able to get away with just one tool in a lot of different cases. So I think we might see some consolidation happening in that angle as well.
Yeah, and that would make it even easier for people, obviously, to get started. So that
Exactly.
would be very welcome indeed.
Yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
cool. So we have some questions from people that came in. I'm gonna put them on the screen because that's the nice thing. If you still have questions, feel free to ask them in the comments on LinkedIn or wherever that you're watching. So we have this one. Here we go. Jean-Luc says, "What automation or no-code creation of yours are you most proud of to date?"
To date, okay. So yeah, so on the personal side, I would say that whole Costco automation.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I love that one. I just get it makes it so easy. On the professional side, I actually that my first one was at a startup where we integrated multiple systems together using an automation tool called Tray.io. And that would have been several developers working for months to write code to do that integration, putting up the infrastructure, doing all the things, and that was all done in one tool within a matter of days. And the outcome of that was, pretty robust. So that one was pretty. I'm proud of that as well.
Ooh. Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah. You, there's so many tools that you can learn and that you can use. And would you say also, this is a question for me, obviously, but like tools that are usable, sort of, do you use different tools in your work for enterprises versus what you would do for you sort of personal automation?
Yeah, so I would say personal is more like similar to tools that I would use for like a small to medium business.
Yeah.
And For professional, yeah, then they have for enterprise they have very different requirements in terms of like compliance and then the scalability. So yeah, you do have to keep that in mind before selecting the tool, especially for scale and security. So yeah, it's a little bit different.
Good point. Yeah. Scalability, reliability, those things indeed then start to matter when it sort of revolves
Yeah,
around
yeah, and
bigger
compliance as
things.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. The next question is this one. I want to learn more about AI in business. Where do I start? By Mark.
So actually, a great question. What I would recommend is start with AI, like start with ChatGPT and ask this question. That would be your place to start, because that's you literally bootstrap it. You pull up ChatGPT and start asking AI for help and let you guide it. I think that would be a great place to start.
Basically, you're saying this show should not do a Q&A section anymore. For your own apps.
Ask AI.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good call. You can also ask these days. You can ask ChatGPT also to look up things on the internet, which is very helpful. I found I often ask it to look up things, and I think that can sort of can indeed be a good starting point. Also, I know that Max Haining has a 100 Days of AI course, which is also pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a great course. Yeah, it's actually an email course. You like spend 30 minutes a day, and you get like a new tool in your email every day, and you kind of get to try it. You can pick and choose. So yeah, if you're like completely at loss and you have literally no starting point, 100 Days of AI could be a great one.
Yeah. Next up, Elsa, what is your stance on AI ethical regulation?
Yeah,
It's a very European question, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. To be honest, I personally haven't given it much thought, but the one that does bother me or troubles me a little bit is about sort of these deepfakes, like the videos and kind of impersonating other people. That one does bother me a little bit, and like also made me a little bit cautious as to who I'm talking to on phones. Are they recording? Like these thoughts come to my mind. I don't know how these problems are going to be solved. I'm not the right person for it, but yeah, definitely it is a bit troublesome in some cases. I don't want the innovation to stop either, because we need that. So finding the right balance, yeah, it's a tough one. Whoever is solving this problem, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that the European Union is trying hard, but I'm not sure if it's going to be let's say open enough not to restrict the development too much, which would be a risk of limiting it. I am myself. I'm a big fan of sort of they try to layer it like with sort of the risk and impact that it can have. So if I deal, for example, with giving you medical advice based on AI, that would be a far bigger risk than me suggesting what soda you would have next, and that I think is a good way to look at it. Looking at what's the impact? Like you say, like deepfakes are obviously they can be used for very bad things. So
right.
Yeah. Have you worked with any of those video tools yet, or not?
I started working with one for audio for cloning my voice, and it was pretty scary because I just gave it a couple of minutes of audio, and then I started typing text, and it converts into my voice, and yeah, it's powerful. So it's also scary.
Cool. I have not dared to do anything with it. I'm like, if I give it my pictures and ask it how I look when I'm old, it will just give me a picture back saying like, "You're already old, dude." And that's gonna be the
Yeah.
end of it. Like,
Yeah.
not smart now, I feel sometimes.
Yeah, you don't even want to entertain the idea. Actually, one use case that I do rely on is sometimes after I've recorded a video and I made a mistake, and I want to correct it. So you can't go back in time and like otherwise unless you re-record it. But I use a tool called Descript where it allows you to, if you missed a line, you can just type out the line and it will like fill it up with your voice. So I do use that.
Oh man, I should stop doing this live.
Just type it out.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, I didn't know that. That is so cool. Yeah. There's so
Yeah.
many of these cool things. We have another question by Hans here. To what extent do you feel that developments like Microsoft Copilot threaten the no or low code spaces? It's interesting.
Yeah, interesting question. I think it has its own place. It solves very different types of problems. Like Copilot is more in line with your existing tools. Like maybe you're working with Excel, you're working with a large amount of data, and you want to ask it like questions. So yeah, of course, like if that can answer your questions, that's great. Because anyway, like I personally feel the best technology is no technology. Like if it's behind the scenes, if I don't have to personally interact with, that's why I welcome the voice devices, like Alexas and all those things. Because I'm like, if I don't have to carry a phone, if I don't have to wear my watch, and I can still get all the things done, great. Because I want to just live my life and have technology supported, not be interfering. So same thing with Copilot. It's going to be more in line with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. But there's still going to be a demand and need for these tools and utilities that are very specific and very niche. So one thing Copilot will help with is if you want to build it on your own, it can kind of guide you. But again, there's always going to be cases where people don't want to spend the time building it and just have someone else build it. So yeah, I don't think it threatens. I think it kind of supplements. And in general, it just like makes things easier. Like that's the whole point of technology. So, but we'll continue to have need for software and apps and all those things. So, yeah, I think they both have a place and they sort of support each other.
Okay. Arthur has this question. Sahil was a
Yeah,
very
Arthur.
proficient developer. I'll take that. I'll take his word for it. And I feel
All
he
right.
could be working anywhere he wanted to. So Sahil, tell us what motivates you to be so involved in no code and low code.
Yeah, great question, Arthur. Thanks for asking. Well, yeah, you're right. Like I have been a developer for a while, but yeah, this was kind of out of my curiosity to try something new, something different, something that was still kind of early, right? Like always felt that I missed the boat on many things because it was too early for me. I was still in school and all those things. And no code local felt like, okay, is that industry is a direction of software development that is still early, and I wanted to kind of attach myself to it as soon as possible, so I can kind of be the thought leader, be in the forefront and ahead of the curve, and sort of then pave the path for people who are going to be joining this space. And also, one of the reasons is because I'm a proficient developer, it is easy for me to pick up these tools and then start building right away. So it's a superpower, actually. So if you already know how to code, if you're already a developer and you want to have an idea, for example, I didn't have time along with my full-time jobs to do any of this. If I had access to a no-code, low-code tool, I would have created a lot of my ideas, which I never did because I didn't have the time. So it's a superpower if you already know how to code.
Cool. Yeah. That I fully agree with it being a superpower. I remember my days as a student in university. I had so much time in a program, and then you start working, and you're like, "There's no time for that anymore." And then I realized how much time you spend on these like hobby projects actually that you don't have time for anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But now it can be much faster.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, this is all the questions that we have time for today. Also, I would like to thank you, Sahil. Thanks for coming on. I've had a good time.
No, thank you. This was great.
The next episode is with someone that you know. It will be live on February 14th, and we'll have Claudia Cafeo on. For those who don't know her, Claudia is a founder of Floxy's community, which is a community for women designers, and no-code ops community for operators of no-code solutions. Sahil, so thanks for coming on the show. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Cool. There's just one last thing that we have to check off of our list, and that's the chain question for Claudia. What's your question to Claudia?
All right, Claudia, how's it going? So I wanted to ask you, you're building this amazing community with no-code ops. And one question that has been kind of coming to me is, will the no-code, low-code community be better off with one large community or multiple niche communities? So let me know what you think about that.
Cool. That's an interesting question because I know that Claudia is very into different communities and knows a lot about it. So looking forward to hear what her answer is.
Yeah.
So we'll ask her that on February 14th. Thanks to all our viewers and listeners for tuning in today. If you like our show, please follow Trigger on LinkedIn or go to automationcaffeine.com. The show will also be available as a podcast on all major podcast channels. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you on February 14th for the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.